you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. The Czech Republic heads to the polls on October 3rd to the 4th in one of the most unpredictable elections in years, with former Prime Minister Andrej Babiš leading the polls amid a fragmented parliament and rising voter indecision. We now analyze how these elections could influence Czech democracy, regional stability, and international relations. So we're joined now by Ján Michalčák, former head of Unit for Countering Hybrid Threats at the Czech Defense Ministry. Good to have you back on the program. Welcome.
Pleasure to be with you, as always.
So we're inching towards this big day, or these 2 days rather, in October. Now, tell us a little bit about the likely situations here. ANO, this is the party of the former Prime Minister, Mr. Babiš. They're polling at about 30%, but it's not quite enough. So tell us the kind of scenarios that we're looking at here when we hit October 3rd.
Right. So that's a really complex question, but simply put, Czechia is a proportionate representation system, which means that more likely than not, anybody who wins the election will need some sort of a coalition partner to be able to govern, because, as you said, 30% is not enough for any single party to form a government. And now it seems that Andrej Babiš might be the one, first one on the line, so to speak, to choose his coalition partners and try to form the government. The question is whether he can succeed, because the Czech party system is enormously fragmented, and it has been fragmented for a long time, basically ever since the last election in 21, maybe even before that, and we have seen very little movements among the two camps, so to speak. So on the one hand, we have Andrej Babiš, a former prime minister who leads a catch-all, some would say populist party, and his likely coalition partners. And on the other, we have the current government led by the Spolu coalition, center-right, and its own allies. And there has been very little to separate the two. So it even stands to question whether any of the two camps would be able to find enough coalition partners to get them across the 50% seat to be able to form a coalition.
Mm-hmm. So it does sound like, I think one of the terms that came up as well, reading about, was this octopus coalition, right? Various small ones. So it means that these smaller parties are going to play a significant role, but at the same time, coalition building is never easy. How much is that going to hemorrhage how any kind of government will get things done?
That could be key, actually, and we've seen that already in previous elections. In 2021, Andrej Babiš was actually the one to get the most votes in terms of number of votes, but he wasn't able to form a coalition because the small parties at that time did not cross the 5% threshold to enter parliament, which meant that the Spolu coalition, which was technically number 2 in terms of the number of votes, got a chance to form a coalition instead. And they succeeded because a lot of votes basically didn't materialize into seats. At that time, we had 2 or 3 parties even just not managing to cross the 5% threshold. They had around 4.5, 4.9 even percent at the time, and they didn't get in. Now it seems that those small parties are very likely, much more than before, to get in, which makes it more likely for Andrej Babiš to find his coalition partners this time around.
So let's talk about Mr. Andrej Babiš, the former prime minister. I mean, this is someone who's one of the region's richest men. This is someone who's very much professed himself a close friend of Donald Trump and Viktor Orban. So let's paint that scenario. If he does manage it, if he gets these coalition partners together, what does that mean for Czech relations with the European Union, with regional allies, with the United States?
To an extent, I'm actually obviously guessing here, but from what I know about Babiš, and I've actually studied himself personally while I was in academia, he is, as I said, a leader of a catch-all party, but unlike other leaders in the region, be it Orban, be it Fico, Babiš is actually not led by any sort of a strong ideological leaning himself. He's mainly after gaining power and mainly after really actually satisfying his voter base. From what we know, even from his close circles, obviously off record, he is personally interested in putting his mark in Czech or even Central European political history. And that he wants to do that by winning and by changing something in the country for his voter base. Now, that has negatives, of course, because as a leader of a catch-all party, he will basically do anything he can as long as public opinion polls show him that the voters would like to see that or other thing happen. But it is a positive thing in the sense that he has no pro-Russian leanings. He has no strong, convictions, unlike, for example, Fico. What could happen, however, is that if opinion polls show him that his voter base wants to see a more aggressive rhetoric, which could very well happen because the atmosphere in Czechia has been really polarized, as I said, he could be forced to become more and more aggressive in order to satisfy his voter base. So we could very well see a strengthening of the rhetoric that could become more aggressive than now, and no one knows what that could lead to.
But Ján, at the same time, I do want to ask, because I mean, I remember it wasn't so long ago after the European European Parliament elections, he had this new bloc form. It's one of the biggest in the Parliament, this cross-party, and it unites ANO and Babiš, and it also unites Orban's party, and also Kickel out of Austria. And they very much have a policy that is different from what, let's say, is currently the rule of the day in Brussels, and very much closer to Russia. So isn't that not going to be part of any kind of policy with Babiš if he comes to power? And also the Czech government right now, very much pro-Ukraine in that sense. So could that maybe change?
That's a very fair point, and you're correct. And from what we know from the ANO party itself, a lot of party members haven't been satisfied with the move to this new grouping in the European Parliament, Patriots for Europe. They have faced a lot of backlash, Babiš himself, from within the party, which is not common at all, actually, because ANO has historically been led as a one-man movement, and basically anything that Babiš says is law within ANO, but this time it was different. So yes, this actually confirms, I think, what I said previously, that Babiš may be forced to toughen his rhetoric. So definitely, if he gets to power, we will very likely see not so warm kind of policy toward Ukraine. But at the same time, I don't see Babiš blocking actively help to Ukraine, blocking Ukraine's EU membership bid, for example, because as I said, he's not driven by ideology per se. He's just driven by satisfying his voter base. So what I think could happen is we see a tough rhetoric from Babiš at home, while in Brussels, he will more or less stay on course because, he doesn't like Russia personally. He is, as you said, one of the wealthiest men in Czechia, and 100% of his business is in the West. And if nothing else, he will want to stay on good terms with the EU and with the West, generally speaking, because he wants to see his business thrive, and he has zero personal and business interests in Russia and in the East.
Okay, just conscious of the time, I want to ask you briefly as well. I mean, election interference, foreign interference, hybrid threats, this is also something you know a bit about. How ready is Czechia and prepared to counter this? What's the danger there?
The danger is enormous. We've seen a significant increase of hostile acts by Russia against the whole EU, NATO, not just Czechia. Just a few days ago, there was this GPS jamming of the plane carrying Ursula von der Leyen, and we've seen hostile acts against Czechia itself. A few months ago, the Czech intelligence services uncovered a network of pseudo media run by the Kremlin. Voice of Europe was the name, that actively spread Russian propaganda from within Prague and aimed to influence not only Czech audiences but also the wider European audience. So it's on the rise. The question whether Czechia is ready, that's $1 million question. We need to invest more, definitely, into intelligence and defense against hybrid threats in general. But also, we need to change our mindsets. We need to realize that Russia is already actively waging a war, although hidden war now, with the West, and we need to fully realize that. And then the change and better defense against the acts committed by Russia will follow.
All right, so it's about vigilance and everything, but of course this is another election that matters for the region. It's going to have an impact. Look, thanks so much, Ján Michalčák there. Thank you for all that this morning. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
And thank you for watching World Talks. There's more coming up right here on TVP World, so don't go away. Goodbye.